the Green Party has been what the Green Party has been. It's been a party that has been able to stay on the field the way that no other third party has, right? Maintained electoral access, but let's just be clear, it's been dominated by aging white environmentalists and has not been the kind of true opposition party that we all need. What's happening in the state of California is that we are building the political machinery on the ground so that the Green Party can become the opposition party that all of us need in this moment. And by the way, that's not just happening here. So I'm starting a campus speaking tour. We're calling it Divest from Occupation, Invest in Education. And we're going up, two dozen campuses in 12 days. Greg Stoker, who's running Green for Texas, for Congress in Texas, is coming out, joining me on the speaking tour. Guy Christensen, your favorite guy, the TikToker on that, the anti-Zionist TikToker, he's coming out and joining me for a leg of the speaking tour. Brian McGinnis, who's running for Senate in North Carolina, had his arm broken for saying we're not going to war for Israel. He's coming out and joining me. We're doing events together here in Santa Barbara, in Berkeley, and then down in San Diego, right in the heart of the military-industrial complex with all of those veterans and all of that military machine. We got an anti-war, anti-genocide Marine coming through and spreading this message. So yeah, you're going to get Malcolm from me on every day that ends in a Y. You're going to get the full Black liberation, message, but we're bringing team that communicates the same core values from a bunch of different subject positions. So we're building, and the people that say, well, where's the Green Party between presidential elections? We outside, that's not.
And I do want to say,
they're having to spend an enormous amount of time fighting ridiculous lawsuits to be able to participate in a democratic process.
Yes, but what you have now is you actually have a leadership coalition unlike anything that the party's ever had before. I mean, yes, you had Ralph Nader, and you could definitely say that he was a leader of sorts, but Ralph is always, I mean this in the most complimentary way possible, Ralph has always been 65 years old for the past 50 years. So there is really something
you said Ralph was born 65 years old. He just came.
Yeah, and that's for that long. And that's the problem. But the truth is that he also came up at a time when, particularly when he was a threat back in 2000, when he actually almost got 5% of the vote. And that would have changed everything for the Green Party. And the fact is that if social media was even a fraction of what it was even 15 years ago, back in 2000, that could have been the difference. Like, it really 100%. Would have made that big of a difference. And
I voted for Ralph Nader in 2000, and I lived in Texas, so I did that purposefully because my vote would have. My vote was useless in Texas anyway.
But people got to stop looking at it as that. Oh, at least I know it's not going to matter here in the state. No, you vote.
Oh, I would have voted for. Oh, I was going to vote. I was going to vote how I was going to vote anyway. I didn't care. But I'm just, nobody gave me a hard time about it for that reason.
But what I also think is imperative here is that you now have a leadership coalition that is building. I'm not going to say anything ill about anybody in the past who's been in the leadership position. But what you do have now is you have Anthony Aguilar, you have Greg Stoker, and you have yourself, and you have Brian McGinnis, and little by little, listen, say what you want, but I call it the Green Beret Party, because there is something to be said for how you market your party, and to me, there are not thousands, there are millions of disaffected veterans.
Oh my God!
Alone,
I've been hearing from them, the expressions of solidarity, because let's be clear, the overwhelming majority of veterans are just grist in the mill of the war machine, right? So what was the rapper? The rapper Madface said, you don't even know how the war started. You just couldn't afford college, right? These are poor working class kids usually that are just trying to find a way out of wherever their neighborhoods are, whether that's a hood neighborhood or a rural neighborhood, or they're running, from whatever they're running from, and get pulled into this complex, and then it chews them up, spits them out, so that an oligarch can stack another, 6 feet of gold coins in his vault, right? That he can sleep on like Scrooge McDuck. So these are people that are being chewed up and spit out by the military industrial complex. And that's why it's so critical to have anti-war veterans as key voices in the movement. Now, they can't be the only voices in the movement, but we've been cultivating all kinds of leadership. Some of our kind of key campaign surrogates here in the state of California, like Fernando de Veras and his partner Leslie Priscilla. They're super dope activists, active in Santa Ana, do community organizing, political education. Like, it's running across the spectrum. My own, she started as my communications director, is now our deputy campaign manager because she's just so good as comms director. We moved her straight into the executive. Angelica Ross, right? We've got trans community not just represented, but in positions of leadership, driving policy, driving conversation. It is a big opposition tent. And if you go to butchwareforgov.com, at the bottom of the page, every page, it says solidarity beyond identity and ideology. We're not, we're not checking your Marxist socialist card at the door. We're literally just asking anybody who is fed up with this system to help us build the power that is needed to contest it. And that's what we're doing.
That is going to be, again, you can't think about anything until after June 2nd, but win or lose after June 2nd, that's where the next phase of this, I think, becomes the future of what this party can be. When you actually have noted leadership that people like and trust and respect, that's when you can build a coalition that is actually capable of fundraising. Yeah. When you are able to build a bank account, if you will, for the party, not in the hundreds of thousands, but in the millions of dollars across the country, you can start identifying, hey, think about that. I think of that girl, I don't want to name her because it's not worth it, but the girl who runs Run for Something in Brooklyn, which they claim is for people to run for office, but we all know it's a front group for the Democratic Party establishment. That is an example of what the Green Party could have without the corporate backing. You could have people say, you want to run for something? We'll have you run for a race where you can actually make a difference. And the fact is, most people in this country would want Green anyway in all nonpartisan races. They identify with the Green Party, but you run as an independent, which is the way everything should be anyway.
Well, so you raised so many critical points. I'll hone in on two. So the first, to go back to like what are Greens doing and the nonpartisan elections, we've run the numbers. So partisan and nonpartisan elections nationwide, the last 3 years, Greens have won 57% of the elections in which we have run for office. 57%. And it's just that those are from mayor downwards, because as soon as the money gets big, the Democrats and Republicans just turn a fire hose of blood money on, or they turn the Secretary of State, against you so that you can't stay on the ballot, or that you have to, spend a lot of resources in order to get back on the ballot. So they create those challenges in that way. But we are absolutely, we're winning right now. And that's also, you've seen the example of how this works in the UK. The UK, they won, the Green Party there won one by-election, the equivalent of a congressional election. And in the last month, they have gone past both Labour and now Reform. So they've passed both Democrats and Republicans, the equivalent of those in the parliamentary system in the UK, in national public opinion polls. And the reason for that is simple. People love our policies. The problem is that we are always being outspent and battered down by the duopoly. One election where we are actually able to break through, and that changes that forever. And to return to your original point, whatever happens in this electoral cycle, we are building that power and that broad roster, that deep bench, and getting those resources. I mean, let me be clear. I was ready. We had a war chest. So when we had to, get retainers, to get lawyers activated, to file cases, to file appeals, we've got a federal suit now that we're preparing against the Secretary of State. I'm not playing with these people. We've been fundraising, and we've been, building the networks nationwide that came out of the 2024 presidential campaign so that we can activate those now.
Last point before you go.
Yeah.
This is very important. You mentioned the Green Party victory in the UK, which was substantial. What was the key difference between Labour, the Tories, and the Greens, and why the Greens pulled it off? The Greens stood up to the Israel lobby and said, we are not supporting them. And that, as people are like, oh my God, how did the Greens become like a real political force for the first time? Like, they are a force now, period.
Yeah.
So when people are asking, like, how did this happen? The Israel issue came to the forefront. And that's why I want to address this issue with you and Jen about jstreet. I personally believe
I love to talk about it. Can I just answer somebody in the chat for somebody's talking about going into a mosque and talking to them about the uniting with the Christians? My experience is that a lot of mosques will have interfaith dinners, and they'll especially have interfaith iftars during Ramadan. So they would probably be very open to talking with you. That's my experience. I don't know what other stuff they have during the year, but I do know that there were a lot of interfaith. They'll invite anybody to come and eat with them. That's what I've learned about the mosques. If you want to, they'll invite anybody to come and eat with them.
For sure.
Yeah, and don't forget the viral meme on TikTok, where the woman was calling with the baby crying in the background, and asking who would buy some formula for her, and all the churches turned them down, and every mosque was, and literally, if you know these mosque communities, and it was literally whoever answered the phone was just going to get on the bus and bring baby formula themselves, right? That's literally how the community is wired. And don't get me wrong, I'm critical about certain things in my own community. I'm critical about, sometimes the anti-Blackness in my community. I'm critical sometimes about the misogyny that can persist in certain sectors. But the reality is that the Muslim community consistently is the most progressive practicing religious community when it comes to, polling that's systematic across the board. And the compassion and mercy is baked in our faith tradition, man. It's just there. It's just
and
there.
Nobody forces you, and that's something that I appreciated. I would tell them right up, look, I'm not reverting, nothing's happening here. And everybody was always very, very chill. It wasn't like proselytizing.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that. And I also find it very cathartic to watch the prayer. But I felt very welcome. I always feel very welcome.
The bottom line about the Muslim faith is that it does not completely adhere to Western values, and it doesn't believe in idolatry. Like, it actually practices that belief system. We are not here to cry over the Virgin Mary, with all due respect. We are not here to look at this fancy architecture. We are here.
Peace be upon her, because she's referenced.
Peace be upon her. She gets. Yep.
In the Quran,
she gets respect.
But you don't need multi-million-dollar marble statues of her. Yeah, again, this is why people look at religion as a grift, and for the most part it is. But for people who actually believe in Allah and believe in Muhammad and believe in the tenements of the Quran, despite what people will want you to believe, there is no more accepting religious denomination in the West than Sunni Muslim.
I'll give you a couple of jewels from the tradition just to help underline this point. The Prophet's cousin Ali, may God be pleased with him, he said the human being is either your brother or sister in Islam, or your brother and sister in faith. That's reference to the Jews and the Christians and the other people that believe in God, or they're your brother and sister in humanity. Treat them all with dignity. So the one across the board. And the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said, help your brother, whether he is oppressed or oppressor. And they said to him, Messenger of God, how do we help an oppressor? And what they really meant was, why the hell would we help an oppressor? And he said, stop him from oppressing.
Yes.
The justice element, the struggle against oppression, that is the critical core part. And you shouted out the Sunni tradition. I'm going to shout out the Shia tradition, because you have seen the Iranians, the Yemenis standing 10 toes down in the fight against Western imperialism on the international stage. So while the values inside the Sunni Muslim community and the community level are wonderful and tremendous, we got to be honest that a lot of those, especially the Gulf Sunni leaders, they are just neo-colonial babysitters whose job is to do. But now, granted, the pro-Palestine, sentiment inside the populations, the anti-imperialist, sentiment inside those countries and communities is broad. But the leadership, sadly, in a lot of those places, the Emirates and Egypt, and it's bought and paid for.
To me, they're not. Those are not. That's not Muslim. Right? No, that's not Muslim any more than the Israelis are Jewish, right? Like they're not.
Bingo.
They're
nailed it.
It's whatever it is. It's fascism and it's just authoritarianism and it's like tyranny. But the people that I have ever met in the Muslim community have been nothing but warm and kind and welcoming, and not like having any issue with me being an atheist Jew. No, like I didn't try to convince me,
La ikraha fi din. It says it in the Quran. There's no compulsion in religion. People are free to believe as they want. And one of my teachers in West Africa, Sheikh Tijani Sise, he said, when you compel someone to believe something, you don't gain a believer, you gain a hypocrite. That's not the aim of the faith. So I want to bring this back to the political conversation with this realization. I think that what they're so afraid of is that the political mobilization of the Muslim community really gives us a huge advantage in the primary for the following reason. There were about 5.5 million people that voted in the 2022 primary. Primary turnout is low, okay? If you get a few communities that are engaged and invested and are willing to turn out in a low voter turnout environment, you're going to do very well. All of our numbers say it's going to take about 1.2 million votes tops to win this primary, right? There are 1 million Muslims in the state of California, and the Muslims voted 53% for the Steinware ticket in the presidential election, and now the contrast is even clearer because there's one Muslim candidate in the race and the system is so afraid of him that they're trying to kick him off the ballot. And the reason is that you can either vote for Butch Ware or you can vote for AIPAC. Those are your two choices, whether you're voting for the Democrats, Javier Becerra, or any of the rest of them, or the Republicans, you are voting for AIPAC. So we fully expect 70+% of the Muslim vote. Now look at what that does. It means that we only have to shave off a very small fraction of the 18 to 24 demographic, which we know is strongly anti-Zionist, and which is why we've got speaking tours up and down college campuses. And we have established, since I started this campaign, 20 new Campus Greens chapters in the state of California. They are out doing voter registration drives right now just to get the registration numbers up, because we know if the registration numbers up are in that demographic, that's going to be great for us. We just held something called the Unity Uprising. Senator Nina Turner, Dr. Melina Abdullah, the rapper Vic Mensa, Conscious Lee, the influencer. We brought a gathering of Black leftists that we haven't had since the 60s, and we brought them together at Cal State LA. So they are afraid of our capacity to build coalitions that break the traditional duopoly categories. They are deathly afraid of this campaign, and they should be.
So I think they should be, for sure. And let me tell you, the Muslims, and I'm talking about in our demographic down in South Florida, they generally were not voters. They generally hadn't really been participatory in the electoral process as a group, as a bloc.
Gaza changed that.
Absolutely. And the change was instant in that one election cycle. And now they're very, very active and very, very, I say they like it's a, but community speaking, at least in Broward, the Muslim community was always kind of, you'd see them at events here and there, but now it's a whole different thing.
Yep.
I texted Nina the day she endorsed, and I said, "Feels good to endorse somebody outside the two-party system, doesn't it?" And she says, "Yes."
That's a big thing for her.
And by the way,
Right.
she was on MS Now today, and she shouted me out on MS Now. I mean, like she's all in. She's been super supportive. We talk all the time, and I think that, you know, as somebody that's, you know, seen how crooked and corrupt the Democrats really are, I think, you know, this political relationship that Senator Turner and I have developed is really something that she's investing a lot of hope, you know, in, because if we're able to build this true third party alternative, then we're going to be able to bring people like Senator Turner and other disaffected, you know, progressives on board. That's already happening, and we're going to continue building it.
I love her to death. I wish she understood, and she truly understood, that she is persona non grata of the Democratic Party.
Her loyalty to the Democrats they were never worthy of it.
Nope.
No.
And the way they treated her and all of it, just all of it. And I did, after the second time she ran, because we went and canvassed for her up in Cleveland. And so, you know, and I love Nina. I'd go anytime, anywhere. If she wants it, I'm there. But it really bothered me that she's sort of like still stuck with them after what happened. And I'm just, no.
But Nina is a prime example of the people I mentioned before: Aguilar, Stoker, yourself, heck, even Shama Sawant, even though he wants to remain independent. I get it. But there is a coalition outside of the two-party system that if Nina were to fully commit to it and say, "I'm done with the Democratic Party, we have to build outside," she is a very powerful voice. She is, no question. She took me to church the first time I met her, and I was like, I figured that she was a preacher, but I'm like, okay, this woman could sell it, and sell it well, but sell it from the heart, and sell it from a place of passion and justice. And that has always been our message. And when that becomes the reality, that you cannot save this system, no matter how much you try, no matter how much of a big band-aid you try to stick on it, that's what's going to happen. Now, I bring this to the conclusion of the conversation because I truly believe that liberals are more dangerous than conservatives in the United States, because they sell empire much better. It is the wolf versus the wolf in sheep's clothing. And therein lies the rub, because as people have probably been noticing, there has been a change, an ever so slight change in language on the part of jstreet and how they feel about Israel. Well, guess what? This article is from just a couple of months ago in Mondale Weiss, written by Philip Weiss.
There it is.
The new AIPAC in the Democratic Party, and that is a fact.
100%, all facts, no printer. That's just the reality. And they're all cashing in. They're all feeding from the same, you know, trough. As I said before, it's the Israel first, California last party, and that's the reason why there's actually so many, you know, traditional independent, centrist, or even right-wing voters. They might not agree with me on every single thing, but they know that I don't work for jstreet or AIPAC, and they're just done voting with anybody that works for Israel, period.
So for people who don't know, because not everybody knows who jstreet is I hate using this term, a liberal Zionist organization, right? Like they consider themselves to be liberal Zionists. So like the jstreet people believe that Palestinians deserve rights, but they also 1,000% believe that there should be an ethno-Jewish state. So it's that oxymoron, right? Sort of like that Jews for Jesus thing, that liberal Zionist. That's not a real thing. So now they're going to try to make themselves look a little bit more forgiving, because.
Camera. So I'll continue. Point is that jstreet this is the sleight of hand, if you will, that we see in politics constantly. Everybody gets focused on AIPAC and the shit that they're doing, where we constantly have to remind people 24/7 that if you think that that's the only pro-Israel organization flushed with millions of dollars trying to not only perpetuate the Zio state, but to screw over working people in the United States, this is all interconnected.
Yep. I'm going to answer the question that just popped up on screen.
Yes.
Me and Brian McGinnis are going to be in Berkeley on the 20th. We're going to be right out on Sproul Plaza. We're doing what I'm calling a teach out, not a teach in. We are going to be right out in the middle of the plaza, teaching people about anti-war activism. So we'll be there in Berkeley on the 20th. People can come to my website. We're putting up the schedule for the whole speaking tour. But to return to y'all's point, about J Street, it's just a mutation in the form of Zionism.
Right.
And it's a mutation that is being conditioned to try to facilitate the survival of this virus, of this toxic organism, because AIPAC has become such a, curse word, frankly, in American politics, that they now try to slip it in, through J Street. But let me just be clear. Even people like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and a few other Democrats who have a record of not taking money from J Street or AIPAC, but still nonetheless toe the liberal Zionist party line, still nonetheless cape for the genocidal regime. The corruption is obvious when you're on J Street or AIPAC payroll, but I really don't care if you do it for the love of the game or because of your personal ambition like Alex does. It's all the same to me. If you support the genocidal state, it doesn't matter to me whether they're paying you to do it or not, right? If you're doing it just on the love or because you want to be president one day, F you too. Like, I really don't care.